let me show you how to write your first unit test. So here in the source folder, let's add a new file called math.js. Now this module, we're going to define a very simple math function. So export constant is even. With this function, we can check to see if a number is even or not. So this function takes a number and returns a Boolean. So here we can write a Boolean expression, number modulus 2 equals 0. Pretty straightforward. Now we go to our spec file. On the top, we're going to import this new function from the math module. Now, earlier I told you that this second argument to the it function is our test function. So in this function, we're going to call the isEven function. That is the function we're testing. We refer to this as function under test. Sometimes in more classical unit testing books, this is called the system under test, or SUT, okay? So we call this function, give it a number, let's say 2. We get the result. Now we want to make an assertion. We want to make sure that the result is true. So here we use another function provided by Jest, expect. With this, we create an expectation. So we expect the result to equal true. This is your first unit test. It's really easy. So we call the function on the test and then make an assertion about its return value. Now here we're using the toEqual method. This is called a matcher. In Jest, we have quite a few different types of matchers. For example, we can get the return value of a function and check to see if it's greater than a certain value. We can also check to see if it's defined or undefined or null or not a number and so on. If we get an array, we can check to see if that array contains a certain value. So as you write more tests, you gradually become more familiar with these matchers, okay? Now let's run our test. So here in the terminal window, run npm test. As I told you, I cannot run this command on this machine because of the issue with Dropbox. So every time I write a test, I'm going to manually run Jest. All right. Our first test passed. Beautiful. Now let's run a second test. So I'm going to select this code and duplicate it. Now, we need to give our tests more meaningful names. First test is really useless. So what are we testing here? We're testing the isEven function. Now, what exactly are we testing in this particular test? We're checking to see if this function returns true if we give it an even number. So here's a good name for this test. isEven should return true if given an even number. This label clearly identifies the purpose of this test. Now, for the second test, let's change the label. isEven should return false if given an odd number. So let's change 2 to 1 and then expect the result to be false. Save the changes. Now let's run our test again. So 2 tests passed. Beautiful. As we can see, the label of each test tells us exactly what we are testing. Now, because both these tests are for the isEven function, we can put them inside a group. Let me show you. So in Jest, we have another function called describe. With this, we can define a group or suite of tests. Just like the it function, we give it a name. So this group is for testing the isEven function. Now, the second argument is a function that will get called by Jest. In this function, we're going to move these 2 tests. So cut and paste them over here. There you go. Now we can simplify the name of each test. So there is no need to repeat isEven. Let's delete it. And one more time. Save the changes. Let's run the tests again. Look at the output. Now we have a hierarchy. isEven should return true if given an even number and should return false if given an odd number. Now let's look at the failing test. So in our math module, let's create a bug. Let's replace this expression with true. So every time we call this function, we get true. Now, let's run our test again. One of our tests failed. That is, this test over here should return false if given an odd number. So we expected false, but we got true. And here's the line of code in our test file that generated this error. So this is the benefit of automated testing. As we're writing code, our test runner, in this case Jest, automatically runs all of our tests. And if we have broken anything, we'll know ahead of time before deploying our application to production. So automated testing gives us quick feedback about our code. Now, let's fix this bug. Run our tests again. Beautiful.